Welcome back to Bleav in the Broncos on the Bleav Network. I am Patrick Chiotti. That is Bri Maestas. We are the hosts of this show. The NFL draft is coming up quick. We're 6 days away, Bri. How you feeling? Are you stressed? Are you nervous?
I thought you were going to offer a third option there. I'm pretty excited. I think all of Broncos country has the opportunity. We've been afforded the rights now that we've got a quarterback. We don't really have to stress about anything because honestly, any move here is really going to just show us an identity for the Broncos. Where are we headed in the Bo Nix era? And I think that's why we all have something to be a little hyped up about.
Yeah, I think my biggest joy, I think, of this whole draft process has been like, I don't have to scout quarterbacks anymore. I haven't done a single mock draft where we're taking a quarterback higher than the 6th round, which is fantastic for me.
This would be a scary year too. We'd be in scary hours.
I mean, okay, we weren't planning on talking about this, but we should talk about it. Honestly, think back to last year and think back to that pre-draft process. Like, obviously the Broncos needed a quarterback. That was the whole conversation, was like, which one is it going to be? Because sitting at 12, we weren't in a good spot. But a lot of mock drafts, including, like, I was getting to the point too where I was like, well, what if we do miss out on a quarterback? What if all of them go before 12? Then what? We take Byron Murphy and we're, watching Jarrett Stidham and Zach Wilson battle it out in a world of mediocrity. And then we, hope that we get the Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward sweepstakes for 2025.
I was 1,000% standing pat with Zach Wilson. Like, that was my idea of what 2024 was going to be.
Yeah. And I like, who knows what would have become, I don't think we would have been in the same spot at all, but it's funny to look back and then be like, man, I'm really glad that we took Bo Nix there. I'm really, really glad, because the upside, for all the talk of like, oh, he's already hit his ceiling, he's old quarterback. Like, I feel like there's still so much growth that he can take. Like, there is a next step for him, right? It's not like it's not like we got this finished product and now, like, it's like, okay, we know what he's going to be. I think there's still room for growth.
It all comes with what offensive weapons get paired up with him through his growth and development into his second year. And I'm not trying to explain the obvious to people, but what he had last year is not the best that he could have. And I think there's room for improvement there, which already puts them in a place of like, we're going to see improvement year over year into 2025, regardless of who they draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think now it puts them in a good position team building wise, because it's like, we got our guy. Now we can put the pieces around him. I always think back to what Payton did in New Orleans with Drew Brees, and it was just like a constant stream of like, we're going to surround this guy with as many weapons as possible in all different variations, right? Whether it is a Reggie Bush, or whether it is a Robert Meacham, or a Jimmy Graham, Jeremy Shockey. Like, he was very notorious for going out and finding weapons that he could use to maximize his quarterback play. And I'm very excited to see what that could mean for the Denver Broncos. But with Bo Nix's skill set, I'm so happy that we don't have to talk about them taking a Tyler Shuck at 20 or Jackson Dart at 20. Like, thank God. We don't have to do that anymore.
Well, when how the pre-draft process is breaking down, you have those surprise risers and fallers. And maybe it's not a surprise to everyone, but seeing Shedeur Sanders, in the 21st slot there with the Steelers is even something where you're like, man, I'm glad we didn't kick the can down the road for this particular circumstance.
Yeah. In this show, we're going to talk about the pre-draft interview that George Paton and Sean Payton held yesterday. Going to talk about some little nuggets that we got from that. I did a mock draft with Bucky Brooks of the NFL Network, Bri, for Bleav. We're going to talk a little bit about one of the picks that Bucky made in that draft and why it pertains to the Denver Broncos specifically, as well as the player that I picked for the Broncos in that mock draft. And then to finish the show, to please the viewers, we are going to be doing our one and only full Denver Broncos mock draft, all 6 rounds, because we don't have a 7th round pick. All 6 rounds. We're going to be, we'll talk through the picks. We'll make our picks. Bri is going to have to put on her general manager hat, and I'm very excited to see that. But fun little exercise. It's always fun to do these in draft season, and even when it's not in draft season. So I'm very excited. Bri, the pre-draft interview conference was yesterday. George Paton, Sean Payton had some interesting things to say, and I want to start off with the wide receiver position because Sean Payton has said a couple of times over this offseason that he's okay with where they're at with the wide receiver room, taking Devon Vele last year in the NFL draft, trading up and taking Troy Franklin last year, Marvin Mims coming around. They brought in Josh Reynolds last year. That didn't work out. Courtland Sutton had a great year. He said he's okay with where they're at right now. But he also said they're still looking at making a quote unquote value add at that position in the later rounds. What do you make of these comments from Sean Payton? And do you think that this might be a smokescreen, or do you think he's legitimately fine with how this class or with how this room is shaped right now?
I feel like whenever Sean Payton opens his mouth, you're sort of trying to set yourself up in an idea of not getting too low or too high on whatever it is he's putting out there. We made the joke before, unless it's to Kay Adams, but I think there's there's a little truth to that, right? You have the people that you're going to talk to. It's the same thing with relationships within any sort of thing. You tell more, you give more to those in your inner circle. Anyways, whenever there's a cat joining me right now, whenever you're sort of anticipating what he's going to say, I try to put not a lot of emphasis behind it, right? We've been talking about the buckets of salt, and that's where I'm at with the wide receiver group. But we've heard it all off season, right? That no, they feel very strongly about where Vele is, about him, potentially being that wide receiver one, even outside of the Courtland Sutton. Is he going to stay? Isn't he going to? So the idea there is that I think that they feel okay with what they have, but they would be out of their mind not to add something within that group, whether it's going to be a developmental piece. But right now they're in a position where they can scapegoat that. They can rest on the idea that, well, for that first year of uptake with Bo Nix, while we're trying to figure out where his chemistry lies and what he favors when he's out there at the NFL speed, they're really determining that. He's got the great chemistry with Courtland Sutton, Devon Vele, both of them being mature individuals on the field. That seems to be working out quite swimmingly, but we knew they weren't going to make a splash play in the offseason as far as free agents were concerned. Like, that wasn't really top of mind for us. The idea that they wouldn't target a wide receiver, at least in the middle, like I get the day 3 talk, right? You have a ton of return on investment there when you're looking at prospects that are going to be value picks. I've never felt highly on them selecting at 20 in the wide receiver realm, right? Like, we joked a little bit, I guess not joked, but we like to consider all options. So with Golden being there, right? Like, that seems to be the one that keeps falling to the Broncos in the 20th position. Now, if they're in love with him, take him, right? There's probably a lot of value, and they probably have a tiered list of, if XYZ is there, then we take, them in that order. Like, I get that it's going to depend on how the board falls, but I don't feel pressed that the idea that wide receiver is where they're going to get the most value in creating a well-rounded offense for Bo Nix to succeed, right? A lot of pressure on his shoulders, and it's not just the wide receiver's fault. outside of the dropped balls through 2024. Like you're talking about a very limited offense, which I know a lot of that can be placed on his rookie status, but a lot of that's placed on what Sean Payton was comfortable rolling out in the first place. So the idea that he didn't have a whole ton of versatility in the tight end or running back groups lets you know that he really didn't want to open up a whole lot of anything, just given they didn't have the propensity to find success there. And so the bigger question is and I don't know if it's just a casual observer's point of view of like, well, if you don't have that star receiver, you don't have an offense. I think the misnomer there is that if you don't have anything other than what your quarterback's really good at, and then the one guy that he likes to target, that's your main issue. And so running back and tight end are already like the higher up on the list, and running back aggressively so, because if you're not adding not only to the run game, but the pass game as well, you're putting yourself on an island for what you're able to accomplish in the offense, and just making it a whole lot easier on your defense too. Like it's such a chess game, and it's such this balancing, like it's almost like an orchestra when you're maestroing everything that's going on. If there is a definite weak link, you're just telling the entirety of your opponents exactly what you're going to do. And that's why I'm not too concerned about wide receiver necessarily. And as far as getting someone, they're going to have to. There's a ton of undrafted potential too that is going to fall to their ability to bring in a ton of guys for training camp, load up the practice squad, and then try a little bit of versatility there. Like, is the worst thing in the world in the second year of Bo Nix in the NFL trying to figure out what kind of asset he likes on the field? And as Sean Payton continues to understand what he has at his hands for development, sorry, I'm being long-winded, but you reminded me of a Marvin Mims, right? So being dynamic for the Denver Broncos, when we talk about the idea of a joker role that exists and maybe isn't potentially filled, you're continuing to play with those ideas and those strategies, because Sean Payton likes what he does specifically, which is why he continues to keep trying to make it happen. So you got to find guys that play into that, which plug into that narrative. I'm hoping this year we get away from a little bit of the no, you must fall into this idea for what I have for this offense, and we can really start to open up guys for what their true talent and skill sets are.
And for the whole talk about, the joker position, a lot of people thought Evan Ingram would be that guy, but I know Ben Albright said this, but Robbie Davis from LTB also said this on Full Field Read. Ingram doesn't kind of fit what Sean Payton described as the joker role. This is someone who can take snaps out of the backfield, can take snaps out wide, in line, offline. Like they can put them anywhere and everywhere and be a mismatch issue. Now, Evan Ingram can be a mismatch issue, but are you going to put him in the backfield? No, we're not going to put Evan Ingram in the backfield. Come on now. That's crazy talk, right? Marvin Mims could potentially, play in that role, because we did see him take snaps in the backfield last year. We did see him be used as kind of that gadget, move him around, chess piece kind of guy, but like a lot of it was eye candy, right? But then he started including him in the screen game. So it like kind of led you to believe maybe the joker isn't just one player. Maybe the joker is the prospects that we've been looking at all along. Maybe it's just a combination of all of those guys, right? It's not just one, it's multiple, right? And that would be a very Joker-esque thing for all the Batman fans. That would be a very Joker-esque thing for Sean Payton to do. Oh yeah, we're looking for this one guy, this one piece. But then he talked about creating the triangle, right? The three that Bo Nix needs to be able to see in the middle of the field: the wide receiver, the tight end, and the running back.
The Holy Trinity.
The Holy Trinity. It's Good Friday. Amen.
That's sacrilegious.
But I do think there's some truth there that maybe Sean Payton has kind of been toying with a lot of the media in this whole Joker talk. It's not just one guy. It's multiple guys. And Marvin Mims is going to play a piece in that. Evan Ingram is going to play a piece in that. And now what are they missing? They're missing the running back, right? So that kind of leads me to Bleav. And you mentioned like having a plan. George Paton kind of talked about that in the pre-draft interview, saying, we have to have a contingency plan for each and every pick and but I'm thinking, like, what if Travion Henderson from Ohio State is their, like, the guy that they want at 20? They brought him in for a top 30 visit. That doesn't always mean that they're going to take him. But Peyton has talked extensively about how much of a fan he is of this running back class, how there's so many different flavors in this running back class. They've talked about Henderson. They've talked about pass pro ability for college running backs. That's something that Henderson is pretty damn good at. Being able to run routes out of the backfield, he's pretty good at that. Explosiveness, running between the tackles, running outside the tackles. So maybe, just maybe, this whole Joker talk is not just about finding a wide receiver like a Matthew Golden or in Igbuka. It's not just about finding a tight end like Colson Loveland. Maybe Sean Payton is telling us, I got the wide receiver that I want for this. I have the tight end that I want for this now. Now I need to find the running back. There it is. There's your three guys, right? So I'm going to be really interested to see what they do. I still think they add a receiver in the mid rounds, and I'm kind of interested to see the type of receiver that they go for, because if it's not going to be one of these, one of these top tier guys in the draft, maybe they're going for a bigger body guy who's just going to be a good blocker, right? Maybe they're going for a guy who can win primarily in the slot, a really savvy route runner, someone who can attack zone coverage, someone who can has the creativity to run the option routes that Sean Payton really loves to put into his offensive scheme. I think he might be looking for someone like that. So I'm kind of interested to see the direction that they go when they do take a receiver in this class, whether it's early or whether it's mid or whether it's late or if it's a UDFA. I'm just kind of interested to see where they go.
I am. And I know there's a lot of talk of duplicative skill sets, right? Where it just gets everyone in a tizzy. And at this point, I think the idea is what are you setting yourself up for success that you can run something that's not inside the box? I think the more that we start looking at what's maybe outside, what's the next level of play here for the NFL, because as things evolve, and I'm not going to say that Sean Payton is stuck in his ways, but there may be the idea too, that if you're able to salt in a little bit of that, because I would love the idea that they'd be looking at a wide receiver that fits the mold of a maybe it's the same body as a bigger tight end that you can move just a little bit, right? So your personnel groups aren't so limited to what people, because I think people get bought in this idea of like, he's a slot guy or he's a deep ball threat and that's all he is. And it's like, what if we had the gamut? Because Sean Payton year after year proves he likes the Swiss Army knife. He likes it with the joke, whatever you want to call it, versatility and the option to create just absolute chaos, totally in his bag.
Yeah, and I mentioned this last week. I went back and I looked at, tight end usage, right? Over Sean Payton's career. And when Sean Payton gets one of those guys, specifically at the tight end position, when he gets one of those guys, he uses them. He feeds them the ball. So we know that he wants to. And the last couple of years, he has not. 13% target share percentage that first year with Russ. Last year was around the same, right? So typically it's up around like 25%. He's not using the tight end nearly as much as he has been in the past, right?
Well, Evan Ingram handcuffed, obviously.
Yeah. And I think Evan Ingram will change that. But a guy like Terrence Ferguson from Oregon, a local kid, right? Has rapport with Bo Nix already, can play, like, will be a Y. He'll be a Y tight end in this league. But also, if you look at the way that the Broncos roster is constructed right now, Adam Troutman's in the last year of his deal. He's not really he's a good blocker, but he's not really like that threat that they would want, right? Terrence Ferguson could, if the Broncos took him, he could be starting at Y by the end of the season. I would bet money on it. He would take over for Troutman. Troutman would be in on, they'll run 2 tight end sets with him. Hell, they'll run 3 tight end sets with him and Adkins. But like, he could be your starting Y down the road. He's already got the connection with Bo. solid route runner, good size, great speed, fantastic blocker. I think he checks off a lot of those boxes. We all talk about Mason Taylor, Loveland, Warren, Arroyo, all these guys. But I think Broncos fans really, really need to be looking at Terrence Ferguson. They did bring him in on a visit. So they obviously wanted to get a closer look at him. So would be interesting. But Bri, we were talking about running backs, and I want to transition to the mock draft that I did with Bucky Brooks from the NFL Network. He made a shocking pick to me at 5th overall with the Jacksonville Jaguars, where he took Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty. Now, I was surprised, but over the last week, we've seen some clips of Jeanty talking about which teams are most invested in him during this draft process, and he said the Broncos were heavy on him, right? So they're clearly doing their homework on running backs, and this combined with the rumor that Carolina wanted to trade out of 8 potentially got me thinking, what if the Broncos pushed the chips in and said, yeah, we're going to go get Ashton Jeanty, right? Obviously, now with more information that I have learned since doing that mock draft, they would need to trade up to 4th overall in order to take that. That's a rich trade. But that leads me to say, do you think a trade up would still be in the books, even if Jeanty's taken at 5 for an Omarion Hampton? Would you entertain that, or would that just be something that you'd maybe balk at?
Specifically to move up for an Ashton Jeanty, if Sean Payton and George Paton are in complete just smitten by Jeanty and in the same way that they were with Bo Nix through all of it, you have to get them, and you have to make every move available, which is going to mean precious trade capital. But I think that they would see something specifically in his game, knowing it would translate well to what they're trying to do and how they're trying to strategize for 2025 and beyond. He would have to be an immediate impact bell cow running back, which I'm more in love with, like the committees right now. But I think that that's because there hasn't really been a prospect where you want to put the entire emphasis of an offense behind, right? They're already doing that with Bo Nix, but he'd be the type of player, in my eyes, if they did make that type of move, that would be the face of the offense for the Denver Broncos. And I'm on the hype train recently, because before I was like, oh my God, he's impressive. And I was like, yeah, but I'm still not moved by the effect or the idea. And then recently with the, this is tackle football, I was like, never mind. I'm going to throw that out the window. I'm on the bandwagon. Yeah. I'm like, okay, that's what I want to hear. Cause I am bought in, and I am a victim and addicted to the vibes. So yeah, absolutely. So it's going to mean I would be on board as long as that was exactly what they needed to be successful. And in their eyes, I would be in the Paytons I trust, I guess. It's going to cost a lot. And it has to mean that their strategy for the later rounds of the draft includes a little bit of a trade back into the later rounds in order to just kind of increase capital this year. And then having some really great ideas for what offseason through 2025-26 looks like, for how you're going to handle a extremely harsh free agency period for the Broncos, as they have to make some difficult decisions, specifically on the other side of the ball. So as long as we're not mortgaging our future, which I get a little kicked puppy syndrome from the seasons of the past, is, are you doing it for something that you so clinically believe in, or because you're desperate? And I think the decision made here for the Broncos is not in desperation if they were to move up and make a pick like that. Now, realistically, do I think it happens? No, I think that they trade back out of 20, if it comes to that. But yeah, if I'd buy in. I think I would. I'm usually very reserved, and I think this one would be really interesting to see how it plays out.
Yeah, I think if they were, my initial thought when I heard the Panthers rumor was, okay, what if JT falls past 5, past 6, and the Jets aren't going to take it. They're not going to take him at 7. The Raiders, I see a lot of people mocking him to the Raiders, but it's like, man, they have so many needs. Running back's definitely a need for them, but like, is Pete Carroll going to spend a 6th overall pick on a running back? I don't know. I couldn't tell you, right? So if he was there at 8 and the Panthers wanted to move out of it, I'd call him. See how much it's going to cost. Move up, take him, because he is the type of player to make an immediate impact. He is the type of player who you're just going to feed him the rock. And it doesn't matter what you run, he is going to be successful in it with a good offensive line, a mediocre offensive line. I think with a bad offensive line, it might not be as good. But like if you have a semi-decent offensive line and a good run blocking offensive line, like the Broncos do, he immediate impact. He can change your passing game. The contact balance is crazy. We saw all of his big runs against top competition, mid competition, bad competition. It didn't matter who it was. This guy was averaging over 5 yards a carry. He was dragging Penn State defenders. Like, come on. This dude is the truth, right? So I would trust them. It would cost a lot, especially to move up top 5. 4th overall would cost a lot more. We're talking first, but future first, future second, future 4th type trade, but it would cost a lot. Would it be worth it? Absolutely.
Imagine what if, like,
yeah.
What I mean, saying you're the next Saquon Barkley is crazy, but I like.
Hey, I love the confidence. Bri, in this mock draft with Bucky Brooks, I'll touch on my pick really quick. I had the opportunity to pick for the Denver Broncos at 20th overall. I did select Ole Miss defensive lineman Walter Nolan. They just brought him in for a top 30 visit. The way that the board fell was interesting, but I thought Nolan was a good pick there. He's fresh 21 years old, violent pass rusher, solid run defender. I think it would be a good add, especially where the Broncos defensive line room is right now with Roach, Franklin Myers, and Allen going into the final years of their deals. I only expect Allen to get extended, potentially Roach. I don't see John Franklin Myers as the one getting the extension. Unfortunately, I love him as a player. I thought what he did last year was amazing. It's a game at this point of who's in, who's out. I feel like Roach has done a fantastic job proving his worth. DJ Jones obviously getting the extension, but Allen and Roach are the ones I see getting extended. And then you have Walter Nolan on a rookie deal. What do you think of that pick?
You have him on a rookie deal. I don't think you're going to be blown away necessarily by the traits that he's going to bring you year one, but that's why this is a developmental learn behind these absolute monsters who are already on the field for the Broncos along their defensive line. But he's already built like a grown man out there. So I think that it would be substantially, and I don't want to say project because that's wild when you're talking about someone who could go as high as like the 11th pick. Just you're hoping that an individual selected in the first round is going to be a starter, right? Thankfully, the Broncos are looking at their long-term goals, which is what I want them to do in the trenches going forward, is don't be stuck in a position where you're having to scoop up the remnants of other teams' free agents as they run to the end of their contracts, which, we've gotten a handful of players that have been great for the team through those means, but the homegrown effort for the Denver Broncos means they can continue the role of the culture and everything throughout that. So now that I'm off my soapbox, I wouldn't necessarily hate it, right? If he's falling that far, I think he's going to be gone well before that, though. And so I feel like that's another guy where if he's, I mean, the Niners are probably in play for that as they're looking to beef up their D-line. So, yeah, I wouldn't be against it because for the longest time before the smoke started to rise, the last couple of weeks with running back and Trayvon Henderson and being, top of mind here, is that they could Go D-line and just really understand that, yes, the offense is really important, but you got the main piece. Don't forget about the other side of the ball, because you're going to have some expensive contracts coming up. So I've been on that track for a while. Pat, I think it's a smart choice, especially because it fell the way that it did.
Yeah.
And who knows, he could blow everyone away and show that because of his size, just the pure beast form ability, is that his skill set is actually better off against other people his own size.
I love it. Well, Bri,